From G20 to geez, oh man, the Russians are bombing the Danube River. Today on The Worldview. Today we're going to cover two things, two major areas, and as well as maybe some things on climate change, maybe bring in some data into this whole thing. Hi, I'm Chris Greco. For the next 30 minutes, we're talking about the worldview. Today we're going to talk about, again, is about G20. Let's talk about the G20 for a second. First of all, big meeting in India last week. And they talked about all kinds of things. They talked about trade. They talked about this. Climate. Boom. Nothing. Climate impasse, total climate impasse at the meeting. And Al Jazeera covers it best, as well as BBC. We kind of don't have that, as it is per se. But, what we want to do is make sure and hit those areas, because I think it's very, very important to talk about these things. Because I'm going to tell you right now, what happens is that when you talk about climate change, you're talking about sovereignty. You're talking about the absolute ability of individuals to talk about their sovereign country. And I'll tell you, what happens is that as things turn up from the standpoint of, we have different types of areas or different types of things, or, whatever it is, the bottom line is this, is that no matter what we do, we want to make sure to bring in climate, right, as a major issue. But when we get right down to it, and let me throw in some things from the data show that I'm going to talk about with climate change. But we cannot in any way, shape, or form, and let me make this very, very clear, and this is not an opinion, this is fact. We cannot, with all certainty, you can statistically significance and all the whole horse poop that goes along with that, but you cannot say that this is the worst climate we've ever had. And man, scientists are out there saying that, to beat the band. Worst we've had in 120,000 years. Excuse me. You have no idea what happened 120,000 years ago. None, zero. We can make the best guess we can, but we have nothing in the way of certainty as to how bad the climate was. First of all, 120,000 years ago, we can't even count the United States. We can't count Europe. We can't count any of those things into what the whole aspect is. Second of all, in 120,000 years ago, there were no satellites other than the moon that were circling the Earth. We have no idea what was going on the Earth at that time. None. We can make our best guess, and scientists, I'm sure, are taking their best scientific guess on this whole thing. But the bottom line is, you cannot predict the past. Stop doing it. You can predict what's been written down in history, but even then you have to understand Bayesian probability. So all these things, when you come into being, is what we're talking about. And when we talk about the G20 environmental meeting, right? No consensus reached on key points, including curbing emissions, scaling up renewable energy despite record temperatures. Now, how, again, when we talk about record temperatures, what are we talking about? We're talking about, okay, record temperatures as opposed to when? Oh, as opposed to, now, if you want to do it 10 years ago, I'm good with that. Even 20 years ago, I'm good at that. 30, 40, 50, 60 years ago, again, things have changed in the way of climate aspects, in the way of monitoring, equipment, all the different things that go along with that. We're much better suited now to be able to do climate, weather aspects. And people say weather has nothing to do with climate. I tell them, go look it up. If you don't have weather, you don't have climate. Climate is climate. If you cannot have climate without weather. Cannot have it. It just doesn't work that way. But yeah, argue with me all you want, but go look it up. And the bottom line is that this G20 environmental meeting proved that. It says, we can't come to a conclusion, or we can't come to consensus. You can't come to consensus because of sovereignty. This is country sovereignty. Countries are still, we're all sitting back saying, oh, we're part of this big world that we're in. No, we're separate countries as part of a big world. This is, yes, we have to, there is a certain amount of interdependence that goes along with that. But the bottom line is this, is that countries are still countries. Sovereignty is still sovereignty. And those are the things that have to go along with that. And this is what's going on. And a lot of people say, well, Chris, what's that got to do with anything? Well, I'll tell you what. Let's go to global greenhouse emissions data. Now, this is EPA.gov. What's the most current one that they have at EPA? Environmental Protection Agency, 2010. 2014 is what they have. 2014 is what they are putting down as, 1900 to 2014 global carbon emissions. Now, look, yes, it's gone up. As a matter of fact, it took a regression, whatever else. Yes, it's gone up. But how much has the population gone up between 1900 and 2014? We're at 8 billion people right now, right? So you have to sit back and say, what was the population of the world in 1900? I'll tell you what, I'm going to let you do that. You do that. You look it up. And it's really not that hard to do, folks. Google, you put in world population, 1900, and then just go from there and figure it out. Say, look, yes, we're going up in global emissions, global carbon emissions, but how many more people do we have? And that's a problem. And people sit back and they go, well, it's humans are part of the problem. Well, until we stop giving birth, we're going to increase the number of people on this planet. As we do, we have to adapt to what we're doing from the standpoint of power usage. And it's really funny that, I'm sitting here on StreamYard and I'm doing this. The amount of power it takes to do this, the amount of effort it takes to do this. I'm powering up a laptop, I'm powering up a screen, I'm powering up light, different things. I'm using power to do this, right? As long off my residential power. So just as technical aspects increase, power requests are going to increase too. So this is by country. Now this is 2014. China 30%, United States 15%. This is other 20%. Look at India 7%. Now let's take a look at this and take a look monthly here. This is from IEA.org and monthly evolution of CO2 emissions in selected major economies 2020 relative to 2019. So let's take a look at this right here. So here's China, right? They're up 6%. And they're here. But look at India. Look at India. This is just April to December. Not minus 41, minus 23, minus 15, minus 6. Then all of a sudden, bang, they're up 2, 3, 8%. And then down here. Look at United States. This is 2020 compared to 2019. All right, they're down. We're down 3% by December of that year. So this is what we have, right? But that's from IEA. So let's take a look at climate change. So climate change is BBC. I love BBC, as you well know. What emissions cut has India promised? Now, here's the problem here. So this is India's, you see if this actually works. Here's 1984. So this is, I love BBC. This is all the areas from 1994. Now watch India here. Watch India. Look, India 2002, 2004. It's going up above Japan, above Russia. Look at the United States. United States, million ton. This is 1 million tons per year. Okay, look at this. National carbon emissions, 1 million tons per year. Here's China up here, U.S. And look about India. Let's do that again. Let's roll it again. I just love this actually. So roll this, and what it'll do is it'll start in 1994. Or 1984. Now look at India. Look at it growing. Look at it. It goes above. Here it is, 1997, 1998, 2000, 2003 overtakes China, 2009 overtakes Russia, and now it ends up as number 3. So India is really relying more and more and more on carbon emissions. They are relying more and more and more on fossil fuels. Why is that? Well, here's the per capita. Here's ourworldanddata.org, another great, as far as I'm concerned. And this is what they're saying here. So here's the United States, tons per capita. In tons per capita, in other words, Per person, what are we talking about? So we're talking about that we're doing, look at this, we're doing 1973, we were doing 23 tons. Look where we are now. We're down here at around 14 tons. China at 7 tons. Now, again, per person, right? So what's the capital of China? About 1.4 billion. What's or the capital of China? What's the population of China? 1.4 billion. What's the population of the United States? 340 million, right? What's India? India is the largest country, and it's right now at 1.93. Now we sit there and we can go back. I love this too. Go all the way back here, right? We can see where, I mean, this is during the Industrial Revolution here. We are really putting in some carbon, right? I don't know how they came up with this. I don't know how they would have measured that in 1888, but it's there. So let's take a look at all this. I'm just going to assume that this has been gathered with whatever. But let's take a look at the relative change. Look at the relative change. Yeah, 100,000% in India. 100,000%. Look at the United States. United States is about 35%. Look at China. China about 16%. Again, this is per capita. But look at India. 100,000%. Now, do you kind of understand why there's not a consensus in what's going on? It's because India has discovered coal. India really is working the coal mines very, very heavily. And because they're working the coal mines, all of a sudden they realize, and why shouldn't they, that coal and folks, I'm going to say this again. I'm going to say it again. I'm going to say it again. Now, if you disagree with me, absolutely present the data, because I can present the data in one way, right? And that is you cannot produce things like the shirt, this. You can't produce these. You can't produce stuff sitting behind me. You can't produce this laptop. You can't do anything unless you have coal, because you can't produce any type of steel or aluminum without coal. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. Coal or nuclear power are the only two that can produce the amount of heat necessary to produce steel or aluminum. It doesn't work with renewable energy. You can't do it with geothermal. People have told me that. I've taken a look. I don't see what geothermal is going to be able to do that, but okay, fine. For the sake of argument, let's just talk geothermal for a second. You can't do it with solar. Cannot produce 1,500, 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit with solar. It doesn't work. You can't do it. You can't do it with wind. You can produce residential electricity with wind and solar. You can do that. I just have no qualms about that situation. But let's take a look at something here. When you put up solar farms, how much land does it take for a solar farm? Look that up. That's land that's not going to be able to be farmed. That's land that's not going to be able to have woods on it. That's land, and you have to have that free of woods. So you can't have trees around a solar panel area. A solar farm, you can't have trees around, or else you're not going to get the solar. So you got to have that out in a field or plain or whatever it's going to be. So now you have a real issue as to what goes on there. So all these things have to be taken into consideration whenever we're talking about renewable energy. What's the one area where I'm hoping for is fusion. Fusion, and I've talked to a couple engineers on this, and fusion is really the way to go. It would be a really clean energy with a lot of power being generated, and that would take the place of coal, and that would actually be very good. So you can see all that. So that's the climate change aspect. There's not going to be any agreements on climate change. I mean, they can sit back and they can go, okay, we're going to reduce this, we're going to reduce that, we're going to reduce this, but at what cost are they going to reduce that? Because remember, and France is interesting because France came on and they came on, and it was Al Jazeera, whoever it was, it might have been Euronews, and said that they were disappointed with that and all this. But the thing is, how many products? I want you to go around and I want you to check your house. I want you to check your house right now. How many products say made in France? Look it up. How many products are saying made in France? How many products say made in China? How many products they made in Bangladesh? How many products they made in India? How many products? I want you literally to go around and find out what type of products you have in your home. They're going to tell you not many products are made in France. They're just not. So they're not a big manufacturing area, and they're trying to tell India, China, and the rest of the big manufacturing areas, cut your CO2 emissions. Well, what does that do? Does that give France what does it help France? I don't know. I don't know what that does. So that's a big issue whenever countries talk about and that's where sovereignty comes into play, right? U.S. has sovereignty, India has sovereignty, China has sovereignty, and they want to do things a certain way for their country and their people. Who are we to judge that? Can't judge that, folks. We just can't. So you have to move on and figure out how to make it beneficial for India to drop their CO2 emissions. How do we do that? How do we, as not just a country but as a world, be able to do that? And right now, we're buying their products. We're buying China products. We're buying all these products that are being manufactured at the cost of CO2 emissions. So here we are, worldview aspect. What do we do with that? So that's a big issue. So second story, that's enough of that. Second story is Ukraine. Ukraine attacks grain stores at River Danube ports, and this is again BBC. Love it. It's really great, and it's when you talk about it, you talk about these areas. And whoops, didn't mean to do that. And so basically, they're talking about bombing the rivers. Now, let's go real quick. Let's go and find out why that's important, right? So we're going to find out why that's important. So we're going to go to Google Earth, and we're going to find out why Google Earth, or why it's important from the standpoint of geography, because I think this is important, right? This is important because otherwise what happens is that we can't, we're not going to be able to figure the things out. And I think it's important to be able to sit back and say, okay, this is what we have. Why is it that, we're going to sit back and take a look at this and figure out which way we're going? So we're going to go to Google Earth, and we're going to figure this thing out and then go from there. So this is the Earth, right? And it'll take a second for it to come up. But basically what happens is that when you have this Google Earth, you're going to have the idea of putting in this, daggum, I'm going to have to, it's a little bit better. So what we're going to do is we're going to figure this out here in a second. When we have Google Earth and we take a look at Google Earth, we're going to take a look at it from a standpoint of where we are and what we're talking about. And I think if we do that, then we'll be able to make that work. So, and as soon as, there we go. Hopefully this will actually work this time. So let's see, it's going to work. Is it going to work? Come on. So Google Earth, there it is. So we're going to go over to Europe. And go over to Europe. Okay. And now what we're going to do is we're going to go over to where we have the Danube River. So we're going to go over to the Danube. So I'm going to see what is the Danube River. So this is interesting. So by the way, they bombed Odessa. So the Russians bombed Odessa too. But what I want to do is I want to show you some of the rivers here. The Danube River is a large, very large river, and it is pretty amazing. I want to make sure, there we go, Danube River. There we go. So we're going to go to the Danube River. Hello? I'm going to go to the Danube River. There we go. Okay. So this is Danube, but where is the Danube River? The Danube River runs, now see, this is the Black Sea, right? Big area of issues that we have. And what's happening is that what they're trying to do is Ukraine has said, look, I can't go this way because the Russians are going to get me this way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start trying to go up the Danube River. Okay. So I'm trying to figure out where the Danube. So the Danube River. Um, this is. I mean, that'd be actually a perfect river to go up there. But see, the problem is that this river here is not well protected, and and you have a lot of it going through some really bad areas, right, of the Black Sea. So basically, what has to happen is they have to try to get stuff through the Danube River, and there's a Danube River that goes also through Romania. Well, they're starting to bomb the Danube River ports is what they're trying to do. So whenever Ukraine is trying to get anything along these ports, they're starting to bomb the Danube River ports. Well, that's going to be an issue because that's about the only way they're going to be able to get grain to where they need to get it. And then what happens is that once they get it to a point within this area, then they can try to get it to the Med, or they can try to get it somewhere else. But the Dardanelles, and the Bosporus Straits really have an issue when it comes down to trying to get through these areas. And the Bosporus Straits are controlled by Turkey in this area right here. So that tends to be a problem. So when you're trying to do this and you're trying to figure things out, the Danube River is just not going to be. If right now it's a great way to be able to do what needs to be done, but unfortunately, it's not really the greatest way to be able to make things work. So what's happening is that and this is where it tends to be a real issue, is that you have basically it going like this. You're trying to get from here, right? So in here are the Danube River ports. Okay, they're actually in here along this area, and what they're trying to do is they're trying to get it through the river ports, and then they're trying to get it through Romania, and then through Romania. Now the problem is it's got to go through Serbia. That could be an issue. Then up through Budapest, Hungary, and then Bratislava through Austria. So Hungary, and then Austria, and then through Germany, and then finally, it ends up in Italy area somewhere, where they could try to get it through there's just hardly any way for them to be able to do what they need to do. But the Danube River ports are essential to try to figure out. Here they are right here, to try to figure out how to get these. Here's the river ports, and they're bombing them. Bombing the ports. They're hopefully not bombing Romanian ports, but I'm sure they're trying to get close, and also they're bombing grain areas. So all these things tend to be a problem with the Ukrainians, and it's really a shame, but that's what's going to happen. And so they're trying to get it either through train or some type of transportation from point A to point B, and it's killing them. It's killing them because the Danube River has to go through some countries that at this point they're trying to help them get the grain from point A to point B, but it's just not. It's with the bombing of the ports, that could be a definite issue. So all these things are happening, and we sit back and we go, geez, what are we going to do here? I think the idea behind this whole aspect is to try to be able to make it work, and to make it so that individuals themselves, will be able to either get the different the idea. Sorry, I'm just trying to get this Ukraine war up again. So what is from this whole thing, what does this mean? Well, it attacked the Ukrainian ports, River Danube, grain storage infrastructure. This is, again, BBC. I love BBC. And basically what's happening is this is the Black Sea here, and this is where they're hitting them. Boom, boom, right? Right on the border here, right on the border of these areas. And as I tried to show you here, this is, the River Danube here. So they're trying really hard to, Russia is going to stop them from doing whatever they need to do. They're in deep, deep trouble at this point in time. And I'm going to make a prediction at this point also, that everyone sits there, and our president has stated in a speech that Putin has already lost this war. Well, let me tell you something, Mr. President. I don't know what your military advisor is saying, but Putin has not lost this war. And as long as the war continues to rage, he will never lose this war. He can put up platoon strength just to hold stuff. Yes, it would cost them Russian lives, but let me tell you something. As long as he holds any territory in Ukraine, even an inch, a mile, whatever you want to talk about, he has not lost this war. Not. And he will continue to fight this war until Ukraine comes to the negotiating table. And Ukraine has already stated they are not going to do that. So this war is going to go on. It could go on for 20 years, easily for 20 years. And we can sit back and we can say, oh yeah, this is going to be an issue. But I'd like to know, where are the climate change people on this? There's a lot of carbon dioxide being plunged into this air. Specifically, a lot of, when munitions explode, that's an amazing amount of vacuum. And you're talking about, dust, particulate matter, everything else in the air. It's putting a lot of areas of climate change into effect around the Ukraine region and the Russian region. So until Mr. Putin is either deposed or dead, this war will go on forever. And it's going to go on for at least the next 10 years at its current rate. The counteroffensive is slowing down. They're going into trench warfare. This is World War I all over again. And it will continue and continue and continue and continue until NATO gets involved, because somebody's going to put a shell in the NATO country, or Poland and Belarus are going to go at it, because the Wagner group, evidently, according to one report, is putting themselves off as migrants to get into Poland. So that could be an issue. So there's a lot of issues going on there. The last thing I wanted to go over just very quickly was the Russian-African Summit. So the Russian-African Summit was something that I think a lot of people kind of hit at times, but I think you have to understand a couple things. First of all, the Russian-African Summit was just ended. It was 27-28 July. And in that, Putin said that he would provide free of charge, the grain to 6 African countries. 6 African countries. Now, what are those? What are those countries? So Putin said he was going to put grain free, right, to 6 countries. And what are those countries? So let's talk about that for a second. So he said, okay, Burkina Faso. So we're going to hit each one here. So it was Burkina Faso, Zimbabwe, Mali, Somalia, the CAR, and Eritrea. So let's go to each one and talk about these just for a second, right? So I think that's important, and then I'm going to let you guys go. Burkina Faso, well, first, let's just talk about 2. We'll talk about the rest of them next time. I'm running out of time. Mali, former French colony, they love Russia. They want Russia. They're having Russian flags, so that's interesting. Eritrea is the area that borders Ethiopia. And interestingly enough, Eritrea, when we talk about Eritrea, it was originally a breakaway from Ethiopia. It was a rebel area, and they enjoyed Eritrea enjoyed at that time Soviet backing. So they like Russia. So those two countries alone, then the CAR has Wagner Group in there already. They're having some problems with indigenous terrorists or domestic terrorism. So they're having a lot of issues having to do with that. So we're going to hit that next time as part of the worldview. But I just wanted to end this with one thing, and that is that it is absolutely essential that you take into consideration this climate change aspect as a world area, as a world deal, and also the term melting pot. I heard this the other day here in North Carolina. A student was talking about affirmative action. He says, oh, when we were at school, before this affirmative action thing came on, we were a melting pot. Let me make one thing very clear. The melting pot idea means that you put different cultures together and it comes out one culture, the American culture. That's not what we're doing here. But I mean, the United States right now, we're diversity. It's all about diverse cultures, right? Diverse aspects, diverse things, not a melting pot into one America. It's not one America. It's like 20 different Americas. And that's where the problem exists here in this country. And it's interesting because the countries that are really sovereign, that really are together, Sweden, Germany, places like that, take a look at what they have from the standpoint of diversity and what they have as a melting pot and what their major language is. All these different areas. I think it's very, very important you do that as a worldview. But until next time, this is Chris Greco saying, just take into consideration everything that's going on in the world, folks. Please, I'll try to hit some areas in Africa next week with the Russian African Summit. I know it's kind of late, but I'm going to do that anyways, and we'll hit some other areas. In the meantime, take care. We'll see you next time on The Worldview.